Good afternoon. Welcome to Thursday's podcast, Tom Brown's News. I'll start today with Melbourne's COVID situation. We know that Luke Jackson, he's a superstar, Pickett and Sparrow will all miss against Hawthorn this weekend. Bedford could be another player. He trained with the group yesterday but does leave with a couple of those players, so we'll keep an eye on him. My understanding this morning, and I have asked Melbourne, who say it's a players' day off, and they certainly aren't disclosing at this stage and say they're not aware of any more players that are positive. But I've got good mail that at least two more players are positive. Now, they've got, for some context, Viney and Lever back this week from COVID. So, look, clubs have to live with COVID. I'm not trying to glorify or amplify the situation, but I do think we'll find out in the next couple of days, according to my sources, of at least a couple of more players that have been impacted by COVID as far as Melbourne's concerned this weekend. We'll keep a close eye on that. Having said that, I don't reckon there's much stopping them from recording their 14th win this weekend. They're going absolutely beautifully, but there's no doubt that COVID has been a big feature at the Demons this week. And I think we might find in the next couple of days that at least two more players have been impacted by that situation this week. We'll keep a close eye on that. The AFL will release the next part of the floating fixture this afternoon. There's two elements to this discussion I'd like to talk about this afternoon. Obviously, there's the release itself. It'll be rounds 12 to 15. Round 13 in particular will feature Thursday night football, Richmond against Port Adelaide. Friday night, Essendon against Carlton to mark the Bombers' 150th year. And I think the Bombers have got significant celebrations marked down for this following Saturday night as part of those 150th celebrations. I think Sheeds and some of the Bombers legends like halves have hit the road this afternoon on a bit of a regional tour to jumped in the bus to celebrate those 150th years, taking it to the regions. But that's obviously a significant part, round 13 of the fixture, a double header there at the MCG Thursday and Friday night. I also understand the next part of the fixture will contain three Thursday night games out of those four rounds. So rounds 13, 14 and 15, bringing back Thursday night footy, which I think has been immensely popular with the fans this year. And a lot of people say, oh, geez, I miss Thursday night football. So the AFL's bringing that back for three of those four rounds. Rounds 13, 14 and 15 is my understanding. The other discussion around the fixture is whether it should be floating going forward. I know Andrew Pridham from the Sydney Swans, very influential chairman, Jeff Brown from Collingwood, the Collingwood president, as well as Gary Pert this morning, the Melbourne CEO, have all now gone on record and said, look, they understand the reasons for the floating fixture, especially during COVID with the uncertainty, but they hope from a fan's perspective it reverts back to a fixed fixture going forward. Look, the benefit of the floating fixture is obvious for the broadcast, and I think for some fans you can fixture the best games when you know of form in the best slots, and there's a benefit to that. But I also understand, obviously, a lot of fans come from interstate, a lot of fans come from regional areas, and a lot of fans like planning with certainty, and the feedback from at least Collingwood, Melbourne and Sydney, as they hope going forward it reverts back to a fixed fixture. Of course, the AFL is trying to negotiate the broadcast rights at the moment. They're going to get a massive uplift. They're worth up to $600 million a year. The new broadcast rights will be worth, the current arrangement somewhere in the order of $400 to $450 million a year. So the AFL will obviously want to deliver a lot of value to the broadcasters as part of that, and that might include a floating component. It'll be interesting to see how the clubs react to that, because three big clubs already, Sydney, Collingwood and Melbourne, have all now come out and said going forward, providing we get back to some level of normality, they'd like to revert to somewhat of a fixed fixture. So that's a bit of a debating point commercially behind the scenes at the moment. Paddy McCartan, one of the stories of the year, I touched on it on our podcast on Tuesday. Obviously, despite his diabetes and 8 concussions in particular, Sydney gave him a chance. He's been generating big numbers, playing really well in defence, sort of reinvented himself there. It's a great story. We saw on Monday he suffered a 9th concussion based on the doctor's assessment, didn't pass his concussion test. Sydney indicated they'd taken a conservative approach. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion now about when Paddy should come back, how he should come back, if he should come back. There's that age-old debate. Of course, we like seeing Paddy play football. He wants to play football. He's playing good football. How many concussions are too much? I touched base with Paddy yesterday directly. He did tell me that he's all good. He said, I'm all good and feel great, was his response. He hasn't obviously done an interview this week. He doesn't feel like doing an interview to camera, but that's what he told me yesterday. Separately, there's a debate now about whether the footage of Paddy in the rooms was invasive. John Longmire raised this issue this week, saying, personally, I don't think the vision should be played in those situations. Obviously, we had Wines and Crozier in similar situations this year with heart scares where some of that vision was played. It's an interesting debating point. Obviously, I can see both sides. I mean, from a player's medical perspective, that's their key moment. They're undergoing a lot. I can understand that players might not want those situations shown on television. But at the same time, I think there's a bit of a case of don't shoot the messenger. We want real footage. The cameras are there. It's happening, and I don't know if we should necessarily be restricted in seeing those types of things. I've spoken to a few footy managers about this issue this morning. I think the facilities were a factor down in Tasmania because in a lot of cases that those players would be taken to the medical room where you wouldn't see that type of vision anyway, and a lot of footy managers would take the players directly in. Obviously, Paddy, I think John Longmire highlighted was just reacting to the frustration of not being able to get back out there. I guess the broader discussion, and I can see the players' argument in all that, absolutely. I guess the broader discussion is that we want to increase the television rights and the value of those. I know the coaches, for example, John Longmire, are strongly pushing in the background to increase the soft cap, for example, and how much they can spend on the footy departments. I'm a bit old-fashioned. The money doesn't come from nowhere. This is my personal view. It's certainly not a broadcaster's view. But I don't know if we should be discussing restricting access at a time when we're going to the market asking for more money for the broadcast rights. Having said that, of course, it has to be balanced with the players' interests. So that's an interesting discussion that's been happening this week about whether that footage should have been shown. And I can frankly see both sides of the argument. Real discussion now about whether the Kangaroos deserve a priority pick. I've spoken to a couple of prominent list managers this morning whose firm view is that other clubs will be, quote, up in arms, unquote, if North Melbourne get a priority pick in this year's draft. The strong view from list managers that I've spoken to is we must have, as much as possible, an uncompromised draft going forward. It's been affected, obviously, by the Suns' talent, by the Giants' talent, all sorts of factors, and a lot of clubs want an uncompromised draft. There's a broad discussion about whether North deserve one. Again, I can see both arguments, here in terms of whether they do. A lot of list managers that you speak to will point out basic facts. For example, that North have the first pick in the mid-season draft, in the pre-season draft. They'll obviously have the first pick in the draft. And they've also got significant amounts of salary cap space. So it's open to them to trade, and it's open to North Melbourne to chase a prominent free agent. And I know they like to downplay this narrative and discussion, North, which is fair enough. But they've chased a lot of free agents in recent years, Gaff, Kelly, a whole range of players, offering them almost unprecedented amounts of money, and they haven't been able to attract a free agent. Now, I'm not criticising North, that's just a fact. So they have got free agency and salary cap as one of their levers they can pull, and I guess it's up to them to try and attract an environment that attracts those types of players. Have they done well from a trading perspective in recent years? Again, it's debatable. I mean, they took Will Phillips, and good luck to Will Phillips with pick 3 in 2020. He's 180 centimetres. Most list managers will tell you go for a key position player. Sydney grabbed Logan McDonald at 196 centimetres, and on the limited evidence so far, you'd have to say that Sydney's absolutely killed them there with Logan McDonald vis-a-vis Will Phillips, who I know had glandular fever, but has also been struggling to get a game somewhat. North Melbourne also gave up their future second pick. They got a bit back, but a future second pick in effect for Callum Coleman-Jones, who currently can't get a game with North Melbourne. And the point there is that their future second, in effect, was pick 19, which Richmond will use this year. And I think Richmond's come out of that deal well in front. So, look, you can go cap in hand to the AFL and ask for a priority pick. But you can also debate whether they've traded as well as they could have. Of course, trading's easy in retrospect, but there's a couple of examples of where North probably could have done better. So that's going to be an interesting discussion point over the next 5 or 6 weeks, or certainly leading up to when the AFL determine that decision.